Explaining how much the monthly payment is when financing home improvement sales is no big deal. You look at the amount financed, then you use your chart or formula, and voila, here's the payment you tell your customer. Using payments to close, especially a one-call close, is a different story. Do you just say the payment's $500 a month? What do you think? No. Here's how I use payments to help in the one-call close. Now, if you like these type of videos, please subscribe, or for more free training, check out the link in the description below. Most home improvements are a one-call close, and for you to do that, you have to learn how to use payments to whittle. Not like whittling with wood, but it's how you gradually close someone. Understand that for most things you sell, especially if it's a one-call close, the customer rarely just comes out and says, "Yeah, let's do it." More common is that they say no first, then gradually you shift them over to a yes. That's what I mean by whittling. An example of this is when you say, "Do you want to do this?" "No." "Well, how about if we do this?" "No." "Well, how about if we do this, this, and this?" "Maybe." "Well, how about if you do that, and we do this, and we do this and this?" "Okay." The concept is that every time they say no, they're closer to saying yes. Working payments is one part of that whittling process that happens when you one-call close someone. Now, for you to effectively work payments in a close, here are the 4 steps I use to make it work. Please listen to the end to hear all 4 steps. The first step you have to do is to sell the product and its value. The close won't work, and you shouldn't even be asking them to buy unless they want the product and think it's worth it. That's done during your sales presentation. Once they're sold, then closing is really just helping them get what they want. All companies have different ways of delivering the price, but eventually the most common way the price delivery leads into the close is when you say, "So the next step in the process would be for you to fill out the credit app and we can get the paperwork started." Then the closing starts. "Well, we're going to have to think about it." "Well, I'm not doing anything right now." "Well, I have to get 3 estimates, etc." Then you're in the close. So make sure they're sold before you even get to the close, and the closing will be much easier. The second step necessary in working payments in the close is to make sure that you've isolated the objection to the money. I'm sure you've heard people tell you that you have to bring it to the money in the close. Really what you're doing is narrowing down what they tell you to the fact that they can't afford it and there's no other reason they're not buying. Now once you do that and isolated the objection, you should be able to say, "So other than the affordability, is this definitely the blank blank that you want to put in your home?" "Yes." And now you've isolated the objection to affordability. So first, make sure you've sold the product. Second, you isolated the objection to that they just can't afford it. Now the third thing you do is to get the gap of what it is that they can't afford. When the issue is affordability, you're always working payments. It's no longer the total price, but what payment they can afford. It's a payment close. What you're doing here is trying to solve the problem to help the customer get what they want. Look at the objection like a question. "Ron, you know I really want this bathroom, but I just don't think I can afford it. Can you help make it affordable to me, please?" So to solve the problem, you need to know specifically what it is. You know they can't afford it, but you need to get more specific. I call it getting the gap of where you are and where they need to be able to afford it. The easiest way to do that is just to ask them, "Well, how much too much is that payment of $700 a month?" If they say about $200 a month too much, or they say they can afford $500 a month, then you know your gap is $200 a month. So you don't have to close the $700 a month now, just close the $200 a month gap. So once you get the gap, you have to close it. You're making the payment lower. The first and easiest way is to increase the down payment. That doesn't cost you anything. Then next you can lower the payment by using different financing terms if you have them available to you. If you still have to go lower, you can either switch the product if your company offers a good, better, best product, or as a last resort, phase the job down. In other words, instead of the whole house of windows, just start by doing the bedrooms and the living room, or whichever was the most important. Bathrooms, you can just do the wet area first, or if you're selling refacing, do the countertop only or the cabinets only. If you're selling HVAC, then start with the furnace only or the air only, etc. Another way that you can lower the payment is with the energy savings your product has, like HVAC, windows, or siding. For example, Now don't forget the money the new windows will save you on energy. You told me earlier that you thought you'd save about $100 a month. So if so, the gap isn't actually $200 a month, but $100 a month if you include the money you save in your energy. Another important thing to understand about payments. A lot of times the amount they tell you they can afford is lower than what they can actually afford. I've had customers tell me they want to be at $500 a month, and then when I could only get them to $550 a month, they still bought. Sometimes the amount they give you is what I call a throwaway amount. That's the amount they can afford easily, but if push comes to shove, they can actually go higher. I have friends in the car business tell me that if a customer comes in and says they want their payment to be $400 a month, that they know they can easily sell them at $500 a month. Now the fourth and probably most important step is how you deliver and work the payments. So to recap, you've sold them, you've isolated the objection to affordability, and then you've gotten the gap of the monthly payment. You know the difference of where your payment is and where they want to be. Even if you can get them right to the payment they want, I like to do it in stages, bit by bit. This is the whittling we were talking about earlier. Also, each time I close the gap more, I re-isolate the objection to the smaller gap. For example, so right now it's $200 a month keeping you from the new windows. Yes. So now with the bigger down payment, you're only $150 a month from you getting the new windows, right? Yes. Keep re-isolating. Here's how it would sound when you work the payments. For example, you're at $700 a month and they say they can't afford to do more than $500 a month. Start with the down payment. So we're about $200 a month apart then, right? Yes. Well, one way we could lower the payment is if you could put a bigger down payment down. This is with $1,000 down payment. Can you afford more? Well, I could probably put another $2,000 down for a total of a $3,000 down payment. Well, if you could put another $2,000 down, then it would lower your monthly payment from $700 a month to about $640 a month. How does that sound? Even though I know it's not where they want to be, I do it in stages. The most likely response would be, well, that sounds better, but I still want to be around $500 a month. Okay, so right now we're only about $140 a month apart then. Yes. Well, another thing we could do is I could change the financing to another company, which has a revolving charge instead of fixed payments. And if so, now your payment would be about $25 a month lower, so it'd be $615 a month. How does that sound? So when I lower the payment in stages, I finish with, well, how does that sound? Then they're either going to do it or say it's still too much. Then I go to the next way of lowering the payment we discussed, like talking about energy savings or changing the product, etc. That's why if I have different financing options, I start with the higher payment option so I have room to go down using this whittling effect. So don't be afraid to have them say it's too much before you lower the payment. Remember, every time they say no, they're actually closer to saying yes. The other reason I do it like this is that even if I'm not where they want to be, like in this example I went from $700 a month to $640 a month, they say no by committing again to the $500 a month payment. Well, like I said, I really need to be around $500 a month. So by doing it this way, each time they say no, they recommit to that $500 a month. So when I finally do get there, they'll have committed to that amount over and over. It locks them in. Again, the key to doing this is that every time I drop the payment, I finish by saying, so how does that sound? They'll either say, that's fine, and then you ask for the order, or it's still too much. Either way, each time you lower the payment and say, now how does that sound? It's like closing. Here you want to be quiet, just like in a close until they respond. Don't say anything until they do. First person who talks loses. So if we lowered your payment with this, it would take it down to $615 a month. How does that sound? And wait for them to respond. Eventually you'll solve the problem, and they do it, or you'll solve the problem with no urgency. They'll say, well, that's affordable. Now just give me a day. Now's the best time for you to use something to create urgency. It could be a today discount you have, or some other way you use to get them to do it now. The urgency discount will work a lot better if you've already solved the problem before you introduce the discount. It's much better than them saying, well, I can't afford it. Well, if you buy today, we can save you this much money. Doing it in stages like this will have the most impact. One thing to keep in mind when you're working the payments is you should be writing everything down on a piece of paper so you can follow as you're going along. The other thing that learning to work payments like this will do will give you a longer hang time in the close. Great salespeople have what I call a good hang time. That's the time from when you first deliver the price to they actually buy. In some cases, it could be 15-20 minutes plus, but you're doing it in a way where they don't feel like they're being pressured and you're not annoying them. One other benefit of a longer hang time is that if you did a poor job price conditioning them, that the length of time in the close helps them get used to the price. They go from the sticker shock of $30,000 OMG to 15 minutes later, they've gotten used to the price and working the payments in that amount doesn't sound that bad. Now, if you want more on this topic, please check out the video on I Want to Think About It or the playlist on closing listed above. Or for more free home improvement sales training, go to the link in the description below. Happy selling!